Hey, what's up? This is Jake from Chestnut, and the Candidates 2026 has already started in West Asia, in Cyprus, where the war is nearby. But they are not worried about that, as our brave grandmasters have their own battlefield to worry about, and that is winning the battle to become the winner of the candidates and challenge the world champion. All right, so we have here the battle between Praggnanandhaa Ramesh Babu versus Anish Giri in the first round of the candidates. So here we have Pragg playing white while Anish Giri is playing black. E4 by Pragg, C5 by Anish, the Sicilian defense, knight C3, D6, and here we have F4. Surprisingly, Pragg transposes into a Grand Prix Attack, and Nishigiri continued to play g6, Fianchetto's the bishop. He's playing Fianchetto the bishop, knight a3. And here, Fianchetto's the bishop to g7, and bishop b5 gives a check by Pragg. Anish blocks with the bishop, and here a4 by Pragg. Anish Giri thought for like 6 minutes here. He was kind of surprised with his a4 move. But yeah, he continued to play knight c6, which develops his knight on c6, white castles, and a6 by Anish, kicking this bishop away. Bishop c4, looking at this f7 pawn, a weakness for black, and black covers it with e6. Here, white continued to play d3, and Anish develops his knight on g squared to e7. And here in this position, Pragg immediately goes ahead, had the initiative to go f5, sacrifice, and went for an attack since Anish Black King is in the middle of the board. So he started to go f5, sacrifice a pawn. He takes f5, and Queen e1, eyeing the Black King that is in the center. Anish blocks it with his bishop on e6, replacing the pawn on e6. Here we have e takes f5 by white, g takes f5, bishop takes a bishop here, and f takes a bishop, and here Pragg recovers his sacrificed pawn earlier. Queen takes e6, and Anish Giri, feeling the pressure a little bit, he goes queen d7, offers a queen exchange, which Pragg declined. He played queen c4, and Anish castled queenside. He can no longer castle kingside as the structure is not really good for him. So here Pragg continued to play bishop g5, continues the attack. Anish Giri pins this knight to the rook. Rook unpins itself, goes to e8, rook d to e8, and here white rook a to e1 by white. Knight g6 opens up the rook, and knight d5 by Pragg, leaving this pawn undefended. Bishop can take the pawn, but are you gonna take this as a black if there's knight b6, a real fork incoming? So of course Anish did not take it. He goes king b8, knight f6 by Pragg. He forks the other way around the queen and the rook, in which Anish Giri replied, taking the knight on f6 with his bishop, and bishop captures the bishop by white. Attacking the rook, and the rook goes to f8, counterattacks the bishop. Bishop goes to c3, and here we have black goes to f4. Now this pawn is entering the white's territory here. So what does white do here? We have rook captures the rook, recaptured by the rook for Anish, and white wants to exchange both the rooks. Rook e1 by Pragg. Anish decline, goes to f8, queen e6 by Pragg. Now, this time I want to trade queens. Pragg is saying to Anish, and Anish, of course, captured the queen as he was offering queen's exchange earlier. Rook takes the queen, and here king c7. The king goes near the pawn to protect the pawn, and knight g5 by white. King goes to the rook, and if white's not careful here, black can go h6, threatens to capture the knight, which defends the rook, and it's not gonna be good for white. So Pragg noticing it, the king goes near the rook, so she got out his rook out of the danger zone and goes to e4, rook e5. By Anish attacks the knight on g5. Knight takes h7 pawn, which is okay for white. He takes a pawn, but this knight is somehow trapped for now. Okay, so here d5, d5 by black, rook e2, and here d4 by Anish, bishop e1, knight c e5 by Anish here, looking to play knight g4 and knight e3 and have a very good outpost here for black. Pragg anticipating it, he goes rook e4. He doesn't want his rook to be trapped here on this side of the board if this knight should go over to e3. So black continues to play knight g4, h3 by Pragg, and here we have knight e3. A very good outpost for this knight here. Threatens to capture c2. So c3 by Pragg, knight d5, and here white can capture the pawn, right? As this pawn is free for the taking if you capture this pawn as white. Black recaptures back and recapture the pawn, and you're up a pawn, right? As white. But actually, it's not really good for you as rook h5 will come and your knight will be trapped here. The squares are covered by the black knights. So your lonely knight in the corner will be captured in no time if you capture the pawn here. So white had to go h4, which Pragg did. h4. Looking to go knight g5, should rook h5 comes. Here, black captures the c3 pawn first, b takes c3, and continue to play rook h5, knight g5. Now the knight escapes from this corner, and here knight e6 threatens to capture the rook, and rook e6 by Pragg. Now this is kind of dangerous. When I was looking at it, I was saying, "Oh, isn't that dangerous?" The rook is near the king. It's being defended by the knight, but black can just capture the knight, and you lose the defender of this rook here. All right, let's see what happens here. So Anish Giri with a little time on his clock, with 1 minute, less than 2 minutes on his clock, he captured. He did not hesitate. He captures the knight on g5, and here you would think, why do you capture with a pawn? Of course, if you capture with a pawn, then you lose a piece. Of course not. You capture the knight. All right, so it's fair. It's even. You lose a knight, and you win back a knight. So this is just okay for white, and he is actually winning the game here. He has three plus 3 advantage over black here, and he's up a pawn with a bishop and a rook, while black has a knight and 4 pawns and the rook here. So Anish did not give up, of course. Played rook g4, threatens to somehow capture the pawn as his pawn is being threatened by both the rook and the knight. H5 for Pragg. Knight E5 by Anish, looking to capture this D3 pawn, but Pragg did not really care about that. He goes H6. This pawn is dangerously close to promotion now, 2 steps away from promoting into a queen. Knight E3 check. A nice check by Anish. Giri checks the king, forking the king and the bishop. King F1. Knight takes this very useful bishop that protects this H4 square here. King takes E1. Rook takes G2. Rook takes F4 by Pragg. So Pragg captured the pawn here. Doesn't want to lose another pawn. Rook H2 by Anish. Rook F6 now, defending the pawn. And Rook H3 wanted to capture the pawn here on D3, but King D2 by white. Rook H2 check. King E3. Rook H3 check. King E4. C4. My black wants to exchange a pawn. D takes C4. Rook takes C3 and King F5 here. So Pragg did not really care about these pawns here. He just wants to protect his pawn and make this promote into a queen. So Anish try to play something. He goes King E7. And here Rook B6 by Pragg threatens to capture the B7 pawn, and black cannot defend this. Anish captured the C4 pawn. And here H7 by Pragg, and Anish resigned here in this position as this pawn is unstoppable. Right, if you try to... So what do you do here if you're black? You're maybe seeing that there's Rook H4, right? It's still defending, but then King can go G5. Okay, so you get away from the white king as far as you can. Okay, Rook H1. And then there's this Rook H6. It blocks your threat to capture the pawn. So what do? Okay, you don't lose hope. You go check the king. King G1. King goes near you. Rook F1. King E3. And if you check one more time, king will just go near the rook, and the rook will no longer have the chance to check the king, and there's still this pawn, a threat to promote. So you go Rook F8, but then pawn pushes forward, promotes into queen, and you have to take. Captured back by the rook, and it's all GG for black. There's nothing black can do here actually. So Anish Giri saw that, and therefore he resigned. And Pragg got a win. So a nice game by Pragg. He surprised Anish in the opening with his preparation against the Sicilian, looking to go to a close Sicilian, but then transposes into a somewhat not popular in the top level chess, the Grand Prix Attack, which Anish Giri had a hard time defending. Coupled it with the enormous pressure from Pragg, and that's it, GG for him. A nice win by Pragg. So that's it. Thank you for watching till the end, and have fun playing chess.